Hi, this is CenterPoint Church podcast. My name is Alexia Taylor, and this is Interviews with Alexia. And today I am here with Amanda Bailey.
Hi.
Hi. So, your first question for this interview is, what was your first impression when you saw snow? Because I know you just moved from Florida all the way here to Michigan. So, how was it to see snow for the first time?
It's kind of insane, right? So for you, like in Michigan, before I jump into the question, do you like find someone who moves up from Florida to Michigan super crazy?
I do have an aunt that she lives in Alabama.
Yeah.
And basically, she comes up here for Christmas and Thanksgiving. So she gets to go through that transition.
Cool.
A lot.
So you've already like met people who
kind
of experienced it. So my first experience with snow, my thoughts of it, I actually grew up in California. So when I grew up in California, we were like 2 hours or less from the beach or, Disneyland or the snow or the mountains or the desert. I mean, we had everything at our fingertips growing up. So snow for me wasn't like a super big surprise when I came here. Watching the seasons change was a huge surprise for me.
Yeah, I love that. I know that you guys don't have like the leaves like we do. So
there's no
we have the
season
colorful
changing.
leaves. Our leaves are very pretty. So
yeah. And so I look forward to actually watching just the seasons change again and watching everything come back to life.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing about snow for me is really watching my husband and my children go through it, like watching them play and then being a part of that and just kind of being a child again in the snow and watching my children be children in the snow and just building snowmen and having snowball fights and we just have fun with it. It is amazing.
I love sledding, so that's one of my favorite winter
events. We've done that a few times too. Yeah.
Okay, so next question is, what is a pet peeve of yours?
I hate hearing people chew.
Why?
Oh, I think it's awful. I do. I think it's one of the worst sounds. If I can hear you smacking your food or gulping your drink, and unfortunately, I married my pet peeve, so Pastor Kyle is a loud chewer and a loud drinker, and so I have to deal with that every day, but that is my biggest pet peeve.
Wow, I never knew that.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Next question is, what is the best part about being a mom?
I think the best part is when you get to see yourself in your children, but not just yourself as who I am today, but watching myself be even better than who I've ever been. Yeah. And so I get to watch my children grow and be able to see the best of anything that I could have ever been and beyond. When I watch all my kids grow, like I have all boys, so I don't really get to see the feminine side, of watching a little girl grow up and having the same characteristics as myself. But I still see myself in them. And then there's also a lot to be able to look at your children and see your husband or your wife, your spouse in your children. And when you get to look at your child and watch them grow and see how smart they are, but just also see the different individual characteristics of each parent within their child. That to me is like when I get to see God's creation and that he used me to form that, like that to me is incredible.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. The next question is, what is your favorite color?
Blue.
Blue.
100%. Okay. It's always been blue my whole life. And I don't know why.
Why blue?
I don't know. It's just one of those colors you look at and it just, scientifically you look at it and it calms you. So I found that out as I grew up. Yeah. But even as a little kid, I have a sister who's like 2 years younger than me. And so my mom would always dress us alike, but we would have the same clothes and she would always be in red and I would always be in blue. But we would always have the same exact style, but in different colors. And our room was red and blue and, growing up. So I don't know. It's just always been blue. I've always been attracted to the color blue.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Next question is, was it hard to move from Florida to Michigan?
Extremely hard.
Oh, wow. I did not expect that question answer.
It is extremely hard. The hardest part about it is really trusting God with it.
Yeah.
once you trust him, knowing that you are grounded in what he told you, God says, yes, you're going, this is where you're going to, and he lays it all out. It was okay, but just that trusting process, anytime you have to trust in God for something, it is something that is extremely hard to do, because you may have people saying, why? Yeah. Why would you do that? Why would you go somewhere? Yeah. Why would you go somewhere where your family's not? Why would you go somewhere where it's cold? Why? And so the hardest part was just being like, you know what? The easiest part was saying, I know that God's called us here. Yeah. But it was definitely extremely hard. It's extremely hard to sell everything you own, houses, furniture. We came here with no furniture. Oh, wow. Yeah, so we had to get rid of absolutely everything and just really trust that God was going to provide. Yeah. And he did. He did.
Okay, so thank you for that. Sure. Next question is, did you have any doubts about CenterPoint? If so, what?
Okay, any doubts about CenterPoint? No. Not at all. I'm a very positive person. So I don't look at any situation and try and pull out. I guess I do sometimes, but ultimately I don't look at a situation and try and pull out the negative of things. I try and pull out the positive and understand that God can see us through any negative. But when God called us to CenterPoint from the very, very beginning, it was something that Kyle and I were very excited about, because CenterPoint really aligned with what Kyle and I believed and how we believed a church, how we believed in being in a church should be. The faith, the beliefs of it all, just being able to worship freely, being able to speak the Bible, word for word, and being able to preach the Bible, praise how you want to praise. There was a freedom in coming here to be able to have a little bit more freedom in even the Holy Spirit, and being able to praise and worship. Some of those things were really passionate on my heart. Yeah. And coming here, God really fulfilled a lot of that with just our desires and who we are and what we believe with God. Yeah.
Okay. Next question is, how did you get through peer pressure in high school? Or peer pressure period?
Peer pressure period. Well, I was made fun of a lot in high school. At least from my perspective, I do remember because I wanted, I should say elementary, middle school, I was really made fun of for not doing things that other people were doing. And then I fell into peer pressure, which is when, middle of high school, when I actually picked up a few things and, I tried smoking or kissing a boy and doing stuff like that, where I was out hanging out, not necessarily with the wrong people, but I was going through some things in my life where I really believed, not even a belief necessarily, but I was really just struggling with what was happening in my life that I just didn't care. And so I kind of let go of what peer pressure was happening, and I gave into it. Yeah. But even as a kid, I remember looking back and standing up for the things that I did believe in, God and some other stuff, and just remember telling people, no, I'm not going to do that, and was made fun of for it, and then fell into it. And then when I was older and I was about 21, and I really came to this point of realizing, I do believe how I believed when I was a child, even though I messed up. And there was this moment of just asking God for forgiveness for everything that I did. And in that moment of actually verbally saying it out loud to him, there was just this presence that came over me of knowing that God forgave me for the sins that I have committed and the peer pressure that I did give into. And it was a turning point for me, actually feeling the love of God in a moment where I was just broken and couldn't go anywhere. So that's a really big question. that was, did that answer it for you?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
The next question is, do you have any goals or ideas for the youth?
For the youth, yes. I so desire for the youth to have a worship team.
Well, that sounds fun.
I know. I really want to see the worship team up on Sunday mornings. I want to see more kids up on Sunday mornings. I really do desire for children to, I mean, look, here we are right here. I mean, like, we have this opportunity and this, like, platform here at CenterPoint where we can have really any child. And if they have a dream or if they have a goal, we're able to really make that happen.
Yeah.
And it's not about putting someone at the front line so that they are, being seen or that they can be heard. It's about letting children be able to use the gifts that God gave them.
Yeah.
So I really desire to see children doing worship, being a part of worship, intermingling even with the adults up there.
Yeah,
but with that, I have a
important.
question for you that I'm
Okay.
sure many people are wondering right now.
Okay.
How did you come about with Interviews with Alexia?
Okay, so how I came about with Interviews with Alexia, I've always loved writing. I don't know, I have some spark or whatever. I've always loved to write, and I've always been a people person. My grandmother's a people person. My mother is a people person. So I get it from those type of genes.
Yeah.
And the thing is that it's so fun when you can tie writing and you can tie talking people together into like a whole interview.
Yeah.
So I came up with Interviews with Alexia because I recently did 2 girls, and I actually recently did them an interview. And for some reason, something just told me, like, you can do more of this. And like, I had so much fun with it, and I just felt like then that night I went to bed and I was like telling my mom, like, God just brought this all to me, like, I can do Interviews with Alexia, I can do this. And I just really felt like God was just putting it on me, like, you can do this, like, you can do something for the church, and it would just help more kids be involved. And I just feel like this will really help, you know what I mean, CenterPoint Church get to know more people, but newcomers can even know that, you know what I mean, like, we have kids involved, and that the youth can always be involved in anything here at CenterPoint.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm like so excited. Like the moment you came up, I'm like, absolutely. So, I mean, to even repeat what I told your mom, like the one thing that I believe is if you have a child that's coming to you with an idea, we should be able to embrace that and help them make that happen. And be able to disciple you even through that, and teach you some of the things. Like Pastor Kyle's going to be here with you, hopefully next time.
Yeah.
He kind of made me the guinea pig, but we'll call him out on that, But, when you are meeting with Pastor Kyle, like, that's going to be a really great opportunity because he's someone who's been doing this for so long. And that's our heart, is to be able to really just train people up in what the gifts that God gave them, and then be able to send them on their way, when they're older and mature enough, and just be, in their own element. And so that's our heart, is to really give that. Yeah.
And that's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so your next question is, was there a time in your life you felt alone? And what did you do to get out of it? And was there a Bible scripture to get you out of it?
That's a really good question. So I'm going to try and not make this as like deep and sad or whatever, dark. But I am actually somebody who feels alone a lot. Like probably the majority of my life I have felt alone. And that's not to say like, oh, poor me. But I have as a kid, I grew up in a house full of 4 girls, and I always just felt like the odd one out. I've just always felt that way in high school, when I wouldn't do things that people would want me to do. I felt alone even when I did things people wanted me to do, or if I was even around a big crowd of people. So I have tendencies in myself that I have to work through and kind of ask God about a lot. It's like an everyday thing of making sure that I don't isolate myself, because if I isolate, then I'll probably not be feeling good, when I isolate. So really, I feel alone a whole lot. But honestly, it's not something that overtakes my life anymore, because I'm able to like sit down and like give it to God, or God has put people in my life. I have children. I have, my husband. When you talk about physical loneliness, My husband, my children, he's put friends in my life, like friends that I've never had before, people who I can call on and say, hey, I'm really struggling right now. Can you pray for me? Can you help me? And so he's put people in my life where I'm able to trust them with like my deepest, darkest secrets. And if I didn't have that, I would probably be a lot more lonely. But I think loneliness is something that I think everyone struggles with loneliness. I think we sometimes believe the lies. Well, I think we all the time believe the lies of the enemy. And then so when we catch on to what the enemy's trying to do by isolating us, it's then time for us to fight with prayer, with scripture, with, having people intercede for us and praying with us and coming against that. And so God has brought people in my life to help me do that. My life verse, so when I was like, 5 years old, my number one verse my whole life has been Philippians 4:4, which is rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. And so that's something that like I just always kind of told myself, like there's always joy when it comes to God. Like God will always bring joy no matter what you're going through.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah.
Their next question is, if a teen came up to you and said, I'm getting out of that Jesus stuff, what would you say to them?
That's a really big question. I think I'm kind of, I don't know, when you talk about teenagers, I'm not like I'm serious to an extent when it comes to teenagers, but I want to be able to talk to them in a way that they're going to be able to hear me. So when someone says Jesus stuff, I would say, what's going on? What's going on in your life? For what's hurting? What's happening? Are you going through something? Do you want to talk? Because when we talk about, Jesus stuff, or we're kind of making a negative comment about anything really, it comes from somewhere. So there's some sort of hurt going on in that person's life. And, I had a really awesome day today, too. I'll just briefly tell you about it. I got to sub at the school here today.
Oh, wow.
And so I was sitting in school suspension with a couple children. And it was just one of those moments, kind of like what you're asking me of what I would say to a teenager. And it truly is about loving them where they're at. And then listening to them. And if we can do those two things, I believe that God can take us through anything else with a teenager or a child or even an adult. But it really is about loving someone right where they're at and just listening.
That's the key.
Yeah.
So your next question is, did you ever have to change yourself for somebody or someone, but never felt yourself in the situation? I know you already briefly went over that, but can you go more into that? Like, have you ever had to go through somewhere where you had somebody told you to do something, or you had to do that just in order to be like about a clique or part of a group? Like, did you have to change yourself, but you never felt like that was the right place you should be?
Yeah, I mean, I know I did kind of touch on that a little bit, and it kind of stems from the same stuff. I have kind of always been, I don't know, kind of a strong person, so to say. Like, I've always been able to, even if I don't say it in the right way, I still kind of start a conversation to say what I'm trying to get at. So I have always been somebody who tries to stick up for myself and what I believe. That's really what I'm trying to say. And then, so like a situation where I've had to change myself to do something. I mean, probably, especially when we talked about peer pressure, but ultimately, I think that as Christians, we have to be able to, I think there can be a negative side of that, but the positive side of that is that as Christians, I think we have to be able to kind of mold in a way to some people. That doesn't mean that we get caught up in the bad things, but we have to be able to change the way we say things sometimes. For instance, if someone is new to Christ and they don't know the Bible as well as some others, we're probably not going to speak to them in depth or theologically, if you know what I mean. We're not going to talk to them and use the big words. right?
Of course, yeah.
We're probably gonna use the smaller words for somebody who doesn't know the Bible as well, and then to mold yourself and change yourself into, if I'm sitting down with, for instance, Pastor Kyle or your mom, who are people who are extremely wise when it comes to the Bible. I could probably talk to them a little bit deeper, and talk to them about places in Israel and how that relates, and I can go on about that, but. So I think there was a time in my life where, yes, negatively I used that, and then I think God kind of turned that and kind of shows you, hey, we still need to be able to talk to everybody and change and kind of mold ourselves to be able to do that, to convey His message to them. So,
wow, okay, thank you. So your next question is, it's something that you have to. Is there anything that you would like to say to your younger self? What would you say to your younger self?
It's a really good question. I am a believer that I do not regret anything I've ever done. But if I had to change anything, I would say to my younger self, to continue to hold to the truth that you believe, and to not waver, because even in the hardest times. So that would probably be what I would say, is to not waver in the hardest times, because I did let go as a child.
Okay. This is my last and final question that I had tons of people wanting me to ask you.
Oh gosh.
What is your favorite food?
Okay, now that's a toss-up, but 100% Mexican.
Okay.
Anything Mexican.
Okay.
Yeah, I love all kinds of, I love the cheese dip, the guacamole, the salsa. I love Mexican food.
I've never been like a Mexican person. I've always been like, I don't know, I like Chinese food.
I love Chinese food
really
too.
good.
So that's kind of like,
yeah.
But you could, if you want to win my heart, Mexican food's every time.
Okay.
Every time. Yeah.
Well, thank you. This is CenterPoint Church podcast interviews with Alexia, and this is Amanda Bailey, and I'm Alexia Taylor, and thank you so much for watching.
Thank you. Bye.